Today we're working on a Dodge Ram, and I'm going to show you how you can replace your rear brake pads and rotors. The first step is with a 22mm socket, removing the 5 lugs that hold your wheel on. Now some vehicles are equipped with an 8 lug, and that's a slightly different process, but you can follow along this video and still get the job done. Go ahead and remove your wheel. And then I used the wheel as a seat to finish this job. Now you'll have 1 or 2 of these small tabs. They are what hold the rotor on at the assembly plant, and you can just go ahead and spin them off a little bit with a flathead screwdriver or cut them off with a set of dikes. After you've removed that little clip, you'll go with your flathead screwdriver and you'll go in between the rotor and the pad and decompress the caliper. With the caliper decompressed, you'll go ahead with your 10mm socket and remove the 2 caliper bolts that hold it to the caliper mounting bracket. Now these also go into the slide pin, or they go through the slide pin. Then you can go ahead, remove your caliper, and rest it on the axle. If you have a bungee cord, you'll want to secure it. And next you can go ahead and remove your 2 21mm bolts that hold the caliper mounting bracket onto the car. So you have one here and one here. So the parking brake mechanism for adjustment is on the bottom side of the driver's side. On the passenger side of the car, the parking brake adjustment is on the lower hand side. On the driver's side, it's up top. You adjust it by moving the sprocket counterclockwise or clockwise in order to adjust the shoes in and out. This sits on the inside of the rotor, which is a drum piece, and presses out and allows your vehicle to be stopped by the brakes and not the parking pile of the transmission. Now back to changing our brakes. So we'll go ahead and just make sure that we knock off any loose rust with our wire brush. And I always like to put a little bit of anti-seize onto this surface here. That way if you ever need to remove the brake rotor for any reason, you don't have to hit it with a big hammer and damage the rotor, so you don't have to replace your rotor. So if you need to replace this axle seal because it's leaking, you're not going to have to replace your drum at the same time, because this surface right here will no longer be a sticky, rusty binding mess. And this is a really thin amount. I'm not worried about it seeping onto the brake shoes at all. It's just a little dab. On that, make sure that you wipe off your hands, because you don't want to get this material onto any of your other brake parts. Now I have my new rotor in the box. I'll just go ahead and put it on. Now we're going to go ahead and start cleaning up the caliper bracket, and I'm just going to do it one side at a time so that I put the anti-rattle clips in the correct place. All I do is just knock off any loose debris, dirt, rust, build up, so that the new clips go on and the pads float very effortlessly. So that is our old setup, and we're going to go ahead and just replace it the same way that it came off. And I'm going to press that on and then just make sure that it's all the way seated without deforming it, using a small piece of wood from the brush. Now onto the other side, we'll do the same thing. Our kit didn't come with the right side, so we're going to go ahead and reuse the old one after we clean it up a little bit, but I just want to show you how it was set up. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is start reassembling it, and what I do is I put the inner pad on first, because I don't think you can get it on with it on the car already. So how I do that is I just put it on sideways, and then I slip it underneath its little tab. And then you can go ahead and do the same thing for your other side. Now it's important to make sure that your pads, when they are properly set up, can move in and out with a sort of amount of ease. You don't want them to be locked on there, because if they're locked on here, they're going to seize on the rotor itself and you're going to have them wear prematurely. So you'll see a lot of people put a little bit of lubrication here and there on these, and I like to do that too because it allows for the pad to slide a little bit easier. And then I'll put a little blue Loctite 242 on the threads of these bolts which hold on the caliper mounting bracket so that it never comes back off on me. Then just go ahead and piece it all back together. Go ahead and tighten my bracket back up. So to finish, you'll go ahead and lubricate your slide pins to make sure that they move freely. And to do that, you'll just go ahead and press one of these out, but you'll also hold the rubber piece down so it comes out nicely and you don't damage this little rubber seal here. If you do, you're going to have to replace them because this will prematurely kill your brake caliper every single time. So you'll also need to depress your piston. We're going to depress the piston inside this caliper here. And to do that, we're using our little depressing tool, but you can do this with a set of large mouth pliers, or channel locks really. So we're just going to crush this down, making sure that the seal is going back in so it doesn't get pinched, and back it out. We'll walk the seal back in around, and then we'll go ahead and install it on the car. So to do that, you'll flip it into its correct orientation, taking note of the brake hose, making sure that's not damaged. And then you'll squeeze your two pads together. You'll make sure that your rotor is all the way seated flush, and you can go ahead and just install it as you would. Now when you're installing this, you'll note that the piston itself has a notch that slips underneath this bracket. So we'll go ahead underneath this bracket, come up, and alright, then once you get your caliper slide pin bolts back in, you'll go ahead and snug them up. Then with those on, double check everything, make sure it's on there solid. You've got everything torqued down to its designated spec. Go ahead, put your wheel on, pump up the brakes, and take it for a test drive. Also check your parking brake. Thank you for watching this video, and as always, happy motoring.